one particular time. Okay, I said one particular time that I hope everybody's here now. You need to listen to this. It's important. I said something when we started JavaScript, and I told you that JavaScript basically runs from top to bottom. It's a synchronous application. And what do I mean by synchronous? Now, in programming, we have two aspects of programming. You have synchronous programming and you have asynchronous programming. Now, in JavaScript, right, we have something we know as synchronous JavaScript and asynchronous JavaScript. What we've been doing for the past 3 weeks is what the synchronous application, synchronous JavaScript. Meaning that you're trying to build from top to bottom, and not just top to bottom. You are trying to build without exactly waiting for something to occur. Now, the only times you had to wait for something to occur was when there is what set timeout. You have to wait for a particular amount of minutes or seconds, not minutes, seconds for that thing to occur. That was synchronous. Now, synchronous is saying that okay, immediately you load your application, immediately you do something will happen. Right? Asynchronous is saying that even if you've done something, certain functionalities has to be how do I put this? Certain functionality has to happen before that can happen. Let me give an example. How exactly do your registration work on Facebook? This is how it works. First of all, there is a logic already written that okay, whenever you impute your password on your email, what happens? Something is going to take all your information and send it over to the database, isn't it? Right? Now, that thing that is sending it over, yeah, it is a logic that has been written, but it's also waiting for what? User input. It is waiting for user input. That is asynchronous. It is not occurring. It is a logic, yes, the function, but the function did not occur until certain user input takes place. Do you get it now? That is asynchronous. That is not like a normal garbage in, garbage out. Not actually garbage in, garbage, but it's not like a normal straight flow of work. Do you understand? Now, as a developer, you have to understand what asynchronous JavaScript does or asynchronous programming does. Because for instance, if a user already has an account on your platform and they are trying to log in, what asynchronous JavaScript does for you is that it allows the user to wait until their login details are fetched from the database, and then they can now easily log in. Because actually, you have to also think about it. The database is not in your code, is it? So it is in like another database that is connected to your code. So yes, you know that normally your computers actually runs very fast, so that it works in a split second. But in that split second, something has to actually happen. I explain what HTTP is. You remember? What does HTTP mean? HTTP. What does it mean? Hyper what? Hypertext transfer protocol. That's what HTTP means. Now let me show you how everything works. I'm going to use my pen now, and I need everybody to understand. Please do not joke with this. It is one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of the developer's career or learning curve or learning point or whatever the English is. Now, you have your browser, right? Which is your client. You have the database, isn't it? Right? Then you have your browser here, and then you have your database. Now, in your server, let's use server. Now, in your server, you have all sorts of browsers. All sorts of websites, all sorts of applications or data, right? In this your server, you have google.com, facebook.com, instagram.com, every form of what? Where that's the internet, that's where everything is stored. Now, how does your browser, you that is here now, right? You want to get facebook.com here. How does your browser get facebook.com right here? There is a medium in which data is being transferred. So this is how it is. I search google.com here. My browser goes to that particular medium to check if Facebook.com is here. And that medium is now what's going to go to the server. and fetch what? Facebook.com for me, and then it's going to return it back to the medium and then back to my browser. Do you understand what I just said? Now that is what your HTTP does. HTTP means what? Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and it is used in transferring data from one medium or the other in the internet. I'm explaining it again. You have your browser right here, and then you have your what? Server. Again, your server is where now HTTP does not just work for browser. So I'm going to use client, not browser. But client is what you can operate. That's what client means. Client is what you can operate. Then you have what? Browser. Now, you have server or database. Server is probably where every single thing that you're looking for is your internet. That's where it is. Now, let's now say you are on your client right here. You want to search for Facebook.com. How do you get Facebook.com? Your client does not have a direct connection to your server. No. There is a medium in which data is being transferred, and that is what HTTP is. Now, HTTP is a transfer protocol. They call it what? Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is used in what? Transmitting data from one medium on the internet to another. Do you understand it now? That's what HTTP is. Now, if I search for google.com here, a request is being sent to what? HTTP. HTTP now in turn sends a request to the what? To the server, and the server returns the what? A response. So HTTP and then to the what? To the browser or the client. That is how it works. First of all, you send a request that okay, I'm requesting for what? Google.com. In that split second, I probably get your Google.com. It sends that request to what? The HTTP now takes it to what? You understand? That's why when you come here, and then if I say google.com right here, google.com right here, and I click on enter, it works, you understand? Like in 1 or 2 seconds, you see Google loading up. But then if I click on this place, what exactly do you see here? HTTPS, meaning that there is a transfer protocol that occurred that was used in getting the resources of google.com to your client, which sometimes can be your browser. And there's even reason I'm using client because sometimes you use VS Code. VS Code can also be your client. Now, what do I mean? There was a particular time that when we were talking about image, it is important to your image links, isn't it? That is also what it so that you can get transmitted data to your web page. Do you understand it now? Now, this is exactly what your transfer protocol is. That's what your HTTP is. Now, you can see S here. S now stands for what? A secured transfer protocol. Do you get it now? Now, it's always important that you include your S. Now, in every browser, as you can see, I did not include S here. S got included by itself, meaning that what in almost every browser, but every browser right now, S is always there to make sure that your browsing is secure. Because trust me, these days hackers are outside. So if you're trying to access a particular website and your website is not secure, or you're trying to and that particular website you're trying to access is not well secure, there's some terrible developers out there now that they don't take security into consideration. So what do I mean? So they just build anything and then they don't, as a developer, you should know actually secure your application. Truth is that there's a lot to development, a lot. You should know how to secure your application. Now, it's not as if you have to learn security on your own. No. There are some measures you take. That's why I always talk about best practices. There are some things you do that can leave your applications vulnerable to attack. Now, if you as a developer now create a particular application that's vulnerable to attack, then you put it out there. Then someone tries to access it without HTTPS, without a secure listing. That means if they can hack that application, they can hack the person that is even going on that website, on that application. Because that application is not, first of all, not secure, and then you are trying to access it without a secure protocol. Do you get it now? So that is why it's always important that you always add S, even in your hyperlinks in your VS Code. I'm saying this because sometimes you might be writing API, or you might be trying to call an API, and then you're not using the right secure protocol for the API. You're not putting HTTPS. Some people just write HTTP and the API link, get API version. That is why it's very, very important that you understand all of this. Do you understand what HTTP is? Is it clear to everybody? Hmm? Meaning that that particular website is probably scam first, or it does not really have, it is not really verified that that particular website is well secured. Some websites are not. So, if, for instance, if you're trying to access a torrent website now, so people that like to like maybe go on torrent websites to buy things, or to maybe you don't want to buy game now, you don't want to pay for it, you don't want to go on torrent sites to download it for free. Torrent sites are not, they are not safe. Hackers can easily go there, hack you, and then because you want to look for free things, they will take everything in your life for free. You understand? That is how it is. So, eh? Free website. Yeah. I don't know. Of course, you can set up Google Analytics. So that's what I'm going to explain Firebase now. Although you can go ahead and learn that on your own. So you can set up Google Analytics. You can set up SEO. What am I Google Analytics? Google Analytics means that I'm connecting my own website to Google to help me analyze it. So after every click, right, I will know that a user has come on my website or done something. So it is not exactly you said writing. You don't have to write things for that. There are tools for that. Eh? Yeah, I think it can be paid for. I've not actually done Google Analytics because that's like another SEO. This thing. I'm not an SEO specialist. I only write things. No, it's not about. So you have SEO specialists that deals with things like that. Me, the only thing I know how to do is to write things. Finish. So anything apart from that, you have to go to an ask. But that's like you can set up Google Analytics. I think we have actually done something like that on the project, but that you can know the amount of people that actually comes to your website. But the major thing is that I might just branch, but you can just go ahead and research it and see how it works. But you can, you can. How do you think Facebook tracks the amount of people that their users? No, they can use the database provided by the backend because your backend is where your users are stored, right? No, your backend is where your data is stored. So, for instance, if every user tries to like sign up on your website, you can use the data, that is the number of sign up this that you have, to know the amount of people that are on your website. Do you get it? So it's actually you might have also have to use the backend, but in some cases you can just use Google Analytics. If you're not really interested in sign-ups, she was talking about clicks, not sign up, clicks. But you can use to track your well, I actually don't. The only one that I know then was Google Blogger. That one, if you create a website and it's them, you know the amount of clicks, you know where they are picking from. You might not know who is clicking, but you know where they are. So that's basically what. All right, so let us just move on because actually we say a lot of time talking about that. But everybody understands what this is now. Now, coming back here, you need to understand what HTTP. You need to understand what asynchronous JavaScript is. Because in most times we will be fetching data from from an API. And what is an API? An API means what? Application programming interface. I'm just going to show you what an API is. So let's say what is API. So you see what I'm trying to say. API. Then if you check it out, you see. Now, API means application programming interface. Now, it is a set of rules and protocol that allows different software applications to communicate with each other and exchange data. That's what API is. First of all, I need to break it down for you. Everything about your application, website, mobile app, every single thing is connected to API. One API connected to one API, That API is connected to another API. Every single thing was connected around. Let me break it down for you now. When you talk about API, you're trying to make your life easier as a developer. So, for instance, you want to build a weather application now. How exactly do you go about building a weather application? Do you go to Kenya, or you go to Madagascar, or you go to China to know their temperature? No. You can do it, but if you like stressing yourself, you can go ahead. If you have money, you can go ahead and do it. But there is an API that has been created to automatically get the weather of each of the world of this location. Now that API is connected to probably the weather forecast of each location that easily gets the temperature data. Now you cannot go ahead and take that temperature and implement it to your application. Now automatically what will happen? You will have the temperature of all the cities around the world. That's what API is. So again, they call it what application programming interface. It's an interface, right? That's what different data together so that it is easier for you to implement them in your program or in your project. Do you understand what API is? Is it clear? I don't like the restaurant. Is it clear? Are we tired? Yeah? You're tired. I know you will not say no, but you're tired. It is actually showing. Are you tired? You're not tired. You're tired. You're not tired. You're not tired. Yes. Which one now? Which one should I believe? Are you tired or not? You're not tired. Okay. Are you tired? So only one person is tired. Okay. We'll talk about API. We're not going to writing codes today. Friday, write codes. Come prepared. But after your project, you now sit down again and start writing another big amount of code. So again, you will understand JavaScript by force. Don't worry, if you don't like me, I don't want you to like me. It's fine. Because you will write codes. So what I'm saying is what you have. So it acts as an intermediary. Now I explained something to you one time. Now you go to a restaurant, right? So you're on a date, then you have a waiter around you. Now that waiter, you go to a restaurant, you know that there's always a waiter for each table. Okay, professional. So thanks. Always a waiter. There's those ones are not restaurants. If you do not have a waiter for each table, I don't think I should call them. Maybe you can just call them. Okay, let's do that. The hair, you can call them an issue. But go to a restaurant, have a waiter for each table, right? So now, if you want to get your own food or you want to get your own drink, what will you do? First of all, there is an intermediary between you and the kitchen. Who is the intermediary? The waiter. So you say, okay, I want to eat this. They take it to the kitchen, bring your order. Now, you are not leaving your seat. You are there, pressing your phone or gisting. That's it. Now, my life is easy like that with the waiter. That's what API is. API is saying, okay, you want to implement a weather application in your project, right? You don't have to write a logic that automatically calculates the weather on around the world and start stressing your brain. You can just use an API that has provided all of these things and implement their data in your app. Why? I am the intermediary. I am the messenger that gets all of these things done for you. Now, the most important thing is just that you need to know how to use APIs, all of these APIs. Now, every API does not have the same implementation. You need to understand that because the waiter you will see in a restaurant A is different from the waiter you see in restaurant B. Some of them might be, for instance, if you go to a Chinese restaurant that you don't understand how they speak, probably they speak Chinese, right? They don't employ any Nigerian, they speak just Chinese. You need to first of all understand how to communicate in Mandarin language, right? For you to be able to communicate with the waiter, isn't it? You need to understand how their syntax is. Now, every API is not the same. Yes, they do the same thing, but they do not have the same implementation. But first of all, you need to understand what API is. You need to know how to use what's the name? Asynchronous JS promises to fetch those APIs. Then you cannot go ahead and read the doc. That's the language of the Chinese. Read the documentation of how API can be implemented. Did everybody get what I just said? Yes. Now, for instance, you are writing, trying to see how the best explanation, right? Trying to see the best explanation. I don't want to use computer science. I don't want to use computer science. Google Fonts. Yeah. That's an API. Yes, basically the form of API, but that's an API. Some people might not have it, but that's an API because some people believe, I don't know why, people believe that to be very hard for it to be considered. It is not hard, right? But it is an API. I'm trying to use like a basic example of what I'm trying to say. So consider mathematics and further mathematics, right? To pass further mathematics exam, I mean, was it further mathematics? Everybody. Not further mathematics. Okay. So further mathematics, and you did further mathematics, or you ran away. So further maths and mathematics, right? So to pass mathematics exam, right, you need to read mathematics textbooks. To pass further mathematics exam, you need to read what? Further mathematics, but they are both what? Mathematics. Do you understand? But they have slightly different application. But one thing I make sure that if you understand math, basically, you should be able to what? Handle both of them. Guys, if you're interested in handling both of them, you should be able to handle both of them. That's basically what API is. Yes, you understand API, but Google API is different from what Twitter API. It's different from what Instagram API, it's different from Facebook API. But if you understand what they are, you can easily implement it. Now, how do you now understand what they are? You need to sit down and read their documentation. That is where we'll be going into in our next class. Documentation. You need to understand how to read documentation because you cannot just go ahead and start building things without knowing how they work. So that's why if you understand what documentation is, as a developer, you can read it, you can't do anything. You read documentation and then you can easily solve any problem. Now, in our next class, we're going to API in depth. Well, first of all, let me explain to you what promises are. Promises are the cornerstone of modern asynchronous programming in JavaScript, providing a robust and manageable way. Sorry, just. Okay, let's continue. So as I was saying, I said promises are what? The cornerstone of modern asynchronous programming in JavaScript, providing a robust and manageable way to handle operations that don't complete immediately. This buttresses my point since what I've been saying about promises and asynchronous JavaScript. Again, in case you want to complete programs that do not execute immediately or complete immediately, that's what you use of promises and asynchronous JavaScript for programming. Again, for instance, if you open a website, you try to log in, does it execute immediately? No. First of all, when you press your details, it first of all goes to the database to check if those details are what? Correct. If they are not correct, it will return an error. Okay, please incorrect password or username. But if it is correct, what will happen? It executes immediately. That is what asynchronous. Meaning in asynchronous JavaScript, two things will occur. It is either you have a what? A success or a what? Or failure. So if you write a particular logic, you have to write the logic of what happens when that condition is what? Correct or true, or when that particular condition is what? Is false. So that's what success and failure. So you need to understand these things. So to truly master asynchronous control flow and leverage the full power of promises, a deep understanding of their internal life cycle, particularly their state and transition, is absolutely fundamental. Now, what does this mean? You need to first of all understand how they work. Now, I'm going to go through this in our next class. Before we just move into asynchronous JavaScript instant, I'll start with fetch. Now, the reason why I'll start with fetch is because it's not that promises are not important. They're important, but there is a new way to write asynchronous JavaScript or asynchronous programming right now. And the new way is through what? Async and await. So we also use async and await instantly because of our time. But I will still give you that advice to go ahead and learn the old way of writing promises. Yes, you have async and await. That's basically what everybody is bringing to right now. But still try your best to understand. If you do that, you have more knowledge, and you do not know when or where your expertise are required. Use these things. Do you get it? Go ahead and learn it. But we'll move into async and await so that you can understand. Async and await is easier. So you can understand all of these things. Now, the three exclusive states of a promise. The first one is what? Now, a promise object in JavaScript represents eventual completion or failure, eventual success or failure. Now, I told you two things will happen. What's the first? Success. Second is what? Failure. Now, first of all, you have the pending state. Second of all, you have the result state. Then third, you have what? Rejected state. Now, you have two actually. The first is what? The pending state. Then the second is either the result state or the fulfilled state or the rejected state. That's the fulfilled is what? Your success. Notice things. Now, what is the pending state? The pending state is the initial state of the promise. Like that's the basic state. I'm not going to write any code again, like I said. But understand this. That's the initial state. The initial state is saying, okay, let me just give you like an illustration. On my application, I want users to be able to log in. Right? Now, I will now write a promise that and that's a promise or a control statement, a condition that okay, users should be able to log in. That's your condition is pending state. Now, the next one is now your what? I hope everybody understand what I just said about pending state. Pending state is saying that okay, I'm writing what I want to happen. Okay, users should be able to log in. That's the pending state. Right? I do it with a promise. I create a promise. When user logs in, right? Now you now have two states. Let me break it down again. When user writes their login details, do you know what will happen? If a user writes their login details, do you know what will happen? Nobody's calling. Don't see it from a personal perspective. See it from okay, I'm developing something. I do not know what my user wants. So if a user writes in their logic now, will you know what will happen to the user or to the user's application? It will be, you will not know because it can either become true, that's failure, or what? Success. So you cannot know. That's what I'm saying. Pending state is a state whereby you write logic, but you do not know what will happen. So you've written the logic, okay. I want users to now what? Put their login details. That's the pending state. The next state is your state. If user imputes the right, what's the name? The right details, what will happen? You get it now. It will give you, it will log in. The next state is now what? If you now go there and impute the wrong details, what will happen? Failure. That's why it's called the pending state, because you do not exactly know what will happen. The pending state is the initial state of a promise. So when you create a new promise, or when an asynchronous operation like fetching data from an API, reading a file, or setting a timer, remember what setting the timer is, set timer, begins, the promise immediately enters the state. Now the first stage was the asynchronous operation is still in progress. You don't know what's happening yet. Because why? You've just set it out, you've not done anything yet. The eventual value or reason for rejection is not yet known. Because it's still pending, the status is still pending. It is in a transient state, meaning a promise will eventually transition out of pending to one of the two settled states. And what are the two settled states? Fulfilled, That's success or what? Failure. Everybody understands this thing. Then no data. That means nothing is coming out yet because they've not done anything. It is still in a pending state. Awaiting users. That is why it is called a what? A promise. Now, this is why it is called a promise. A promise is saying that something will happen. Now, I promise you, if you can, just like I said, I promise you that if you can give me a project, I'll be able to give you the reality. That's success, Abi. Failure is now when you are not able to complete. Do you understand what promise, success, and freedom is now? Is it clear? Is it clear to you? Ebenezer, is it clear? A little. Okay. So that is basically what a promise is. Promise is saying that something will happen after, just after the particular action has been completed by the user. Right? That's usually what the promise is. Now I give an example of user login. Right? There's another example. I'm trying to even remember it. There's another example I remember just now. I wanted to give it. Okay, that's basically one thing about the promise. Is it clear to you now? To everybody? Everybody, is it clear? All right. Shit. Good. That's the example I'm looking for. That's the example I'm looking for. Pending, right? So you see pending. Pending means that it is awaiting approval for what? For payment. So there's sometimes that you probably try to like pay for something online, and then on maybe you've seen OPay do something like this. Somebody has sent money to your account, but you've not seen it reflect on your total balance. You are seeing pending in the transaction that they sent you money, but it's still pending. That means that I'm waiting for confirmation from the provider. That's asynchronous. Yes, something has happened, but it is still pending. It is not yet paid for success. It is just still there. Meaning that is waiting a particular success. That's what pending is. Do you get it now? So it is waiting for something to happen before it gives you success or failure. Now that is the three things that every asynchronous programming or asynchronous syntax will give to you. Those three things: pending, success, failure. Pending, success, failure. If it does not give you what success, it will give you a failure. Those three things are very important. Is it clear? Is it clear? Good. Now, those are the three things that you need to understand. So you have what your promise. So you have pending and what you have. They have fulfilled. And all right. So now I will refrain from writing codes in this class. Now next class we'll talk about. You can still go ahead and write all of these. These things are very, 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 very important. You can go ahead, check all of these things out, understand what they are. Then in our next class, we'll just go ahead and talk about what async and await. Now, async and await is, as you can see, CI syntax is easy, very easy and straightforward. So all you just have to do, async is saying that, okay, I'm waiting for something. Okay, this is an asynchronous JavaScript. Then await, you see await right in the function. I'm checking it out. Okay, yeah. So now you should see await right here. Can you see await? Now, this async is making sure that this particular function is what? An asynchronous function. Then this await is waiting for what? For this 1000 seconds to work before this gets logged to the console. You understand? So it's waiting for something to happen before something else what happens. So this is basically what asynchronous JavaScript. That will be the end of today's class. If you have any question, you can go ahead and ask now before we end the class. Any question?